Hey everyone, and welcome back to Commander Clash. This week, we are going to be discussing the best mana rocks at mana value 4 or greater. So, mana rocks, as defined for this podcast, are going to be artifacts that are going to be giving you mana advantage. So, they either tap for mana, which is probably the most traditional definition for mana rocks, artifacts that tap for mana, but we're also going to be including stuff that give mana discounts. So a spell like Primal Amulet gives discounts to your instants and sorceries, makes them cost less. We're going to count that as a mana rock because it's an artifact that does that. And then any other way that generates mana advantage that we can come up with. So we're keeping it kind of loose so we can discuss multiple cards. We covered, I believe, 23 or so artifacts. And we're going to have the full list of cards that we ranked in the video description over on YouTube and on the article, so you can check them out there at your leisure. But we decided we're each going to be talking about three. Each of us are going to be bringing three artifacts that we want to talk about in the group because we think are going to have very interesting stuff to discuss as a group. And joined with me, as always, is Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good, Tome. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm great. Clearly, I'm tired, so I need to get a drink from my Coke Zero. Not sponsored, but wish I was. Moving on, we got Krim, aka the Asian Avenger, aka someone who's also probably quite tired. How's it going, Krim?
Yes, Tomer. Yes, that's how's it going. Hi, good morning. I am having a busy day, so thanks for having me.
As I heard, your apartment's hunting right now in the midst of also just very craziness as well, right?
Yep, just constantly running back and forth. So
fun times. Well, good luck with the hunt. I hope it gets resolved very quickly. And next up, we got Phil, a.k.a. Brewer's Kitchen. How's it going, Phil?
Hey-oh. Everything's good over here. Kind of excited to talk about cards that I mostly don't play. But if you play 4 mana rocks, we're going to highlight the good ones.
You don't play any of these?
Some of them. But... Okay. I'm not going to play a Hedron Archive.
And you would be wrong.
And no one should.
Oh my god. All right, let's get to
talk
this
about
list.
That. Yeah. Well, first, so we have a specific ranking scale, and obviously rankings mean nothing without definitions. So we're using a very specific definition to rank these, and that's why if you say like, oh, why didn't you rank this S? Well, as long as we're ranking based on our definition, then that's basically all that matters. So our definitions go like so. At D, these are cards that we don't play. We actively cut these from our deck, and we won't willingly put these in our decks. At C, we have average cards, which are mediocre filler cards. They might be added into the deck because we have some sort of thematic restriction or a budget restriction, for example. At B, we have cards that are only good in certain decks. They're good in a small percentage of decks. They might be all-stars in a very specific archetype or a very specific commander, but they're not universally good, and you're not going to be jamming them in a vacuum. So let's say a card is really, really good in a Spellslinger deck. It's like the best mana rock in Spellslinger, but it's horrible elsewhere. We're going to rank that B. At A, though, these are really good cards in a large percentage of decks. Not all decks, but they're going to be very good in most of them. And then finally is S rank. These are cards that we consider very good, at top of the top, in basically any single deck. And you basically have to have a reason why you don't run these in your deck for them to fit. So yeah, that's our criteria. We're only going to be talking about like 12 or so cards. And we're going to be skipping some of the more boring options. Like the Great Henge is here. Is card draw and ramp and is nutty, but we're all... Oh, wait. No, we are talking about it. Never mind. there are stuff that we're not talking about that we're all like have a consensus with.
Spoiler.
But there's... I might have to change my rating just to spice it up a little bit. Anywho, whatever. But before we go into things, you can like and subscribe to help the channel grow. And secondly, if you want to support the channel, you can head on over to our merch store, mtggoldfishmerch.com. You can buy deck boxes, deck sleeves, t-shirts, and so much more over at mtggoldfishmerch.com. All right, let's get it in. Yeah. Whoa, okay, I am tired. So just let me not talk anymore by introducing the first card.
I don't know if you want to let me go first, Homer, because we're going there right from the start. First mana rock Hedron Archive, 4 mana, you tap it for 2 generic mana, or you can pay 2 and tap it and sack it and draw 2 cards. If you look at the ratings, pretty much all of you are just super wrong. Phil's got it as a D. Tomer's got it as a D. Krim, a little bit of respect, gives it a C. I got it as an A. I think this card is just... It is just a good card. It's a good ramp spell. It's 4 mana. It makes 2 mana. That's fine. And then later in the game, when you don't need the mana, it turns into 2 cards, which is also fine. If you look at this rating, you will see that everyone loves other mana rocks that are similar that don't draw cards, like Worn Power, or not Worn Power Stone. What's the 4 mana one? I'm forgetting. Oh, Thran Dynamo. Everyone's got Thran Dynamo ranked highly. Hedron Archive makes 1 less mana, but it draws you 2 more cards. Is 2 cards worth 1 mana? I would say the answer is pretty clearly yes. So if you're someone that's ranking Thran Dynamo an A or an S, but giving Hedron Archive a D, I don't know what to tell you, other than I guess I just don't trust your opinion about Magic cards.
This is because I have a low opinion on Phyrexian Arena. Is that it, Seth? Are you just trying to get back on me? Are you trying to rustle my jimmies?
I really truly believe that Phyrexian Arena is a good card, and that Hedron Archive, like, seriously, D, do not ever play? Like, why is it? Explain to me why it's bad. Someone sell me on this D rating. Maybe you can change my opinion, and if I agree with you, I will drop my rating down. So why is this card? Don't actively play it. Try to discard it to gamble. I'm curious. What's the problem with Hedron Archive?
I don't want to sacrifice a 4-drop to draw 2. I get that. Yeah, it's kind of cool if you have to do it, but I really don't want to do it. It's like a fair case for a situation I really try to avoid. And drawing 2 cards is not that.
Do you play Mind Stone? Do you play Mind Stone in your decks?
That's a fine rate, though. It taps for 1 mana. That's what all 2-drop rocks do.
This taps for 2 mana, which is
that's Dynamo taps for 3.
2 Mind Stones.
Yeah, that is literally 2 Mind Stones.
And it doesn't just also draw cards. It either ramps or draw cards, and are missing out the fact that you have to pay 2 mana and tap it to draw those cards and sacrifice it. So you do that one time and it's gone. You've essentially spent 4 mana to draw 2 cards off that ability, and then you paid 4 mana for the Hedron Archive itself. You've essentially paid 8 mana's worth of mana and sacrificed your ramp source to draw 2 cards. Like, wow.
I just never sacrificed it so far. Maybe I never play it as well. That could be part of the reason.
Think of the Commander games where you play your Commander game, in the early game you ramp and make all this mana, and then you get to the late game and you draw a couple lands in a row and you got nothing going on, and you're like, I really need some like action. What are you going to do with your Thran Dynamo there? It's just going to mock you as you sit there and cry about the fact you got all the mana and nothing to do with it. Isn't having the option to turn that mana rock once it becomes useless in the late game and you already have more mana than you could ever possibly use into 2 potentially relevant Magic cards? Like, isn't that some vote for Hedron Archive? Like, does no one else like drawing cards? I thought y'all like drawing cards.
Build your deck better. Run more card draw. What are you doing being empty-handed all game long? Just build, if you're in that position more than once in a blue moon, then you built your deck wrong. Run more card advantage.
Yes, you built your deck wrong by not including Hedron Archive so you could draw some cards. Yeah, I agree. We agree, Tomer.
Obviously, you're in a situation where you have to crack the Hedron Archive for bad card draw because you're running a Hedron Archive deck, so you've already gone way off the path in terms of building a good deck. So yes, I understand. If you're in a Hedron Archive deck, then it makes sense. Then you would want this ability because you've already made a trash fire of a deck that you've gotten to this point. So far.
Now.
Good in a Hedron Archive
Everybody
deck.
gather around, okay? I first off do agree with Seth that yes, it is good to have the ability to turn any of my mana rocks into card draw. However, it is not an A. It is not trash. Like it is not like unplayable. Do not play. But it is nowhere nearly like that exciting of a card. I have it rated at C. I have Thran Dynamo at a C. I just think that like for like a mana rock at 4 mana, I guess I would probably value Hedron Archive a little bit higher than Thran Dynamo, but just barely. But they're both average. I don't know. I don't want that for like my mana rocks. If it's 4+, usually all the 4+ mana rocks do something more than just draw me 2 random cards. Or there's a lot on here that I think I can't wait to talk about. But for right now, hear me out, all right, everybody? I think it's just average. It's not that good, but it's really not that bad, Tomer. Come on.
I can respect Crim's opinion here. If you're going to say that, like, it's roughly the same as playing a Thran Dynamo and you have them, like, more or less rated the same, I can respect that. I think that's like a reasonable take to me. I think when you say like Thran Dynamo is really good and Hedron Archive is completely unplayable, that's where my mind starts to boggle. But if you're like they're both just like kind of okay, I can respect that take. Thran
Dynamo tests for 3, Seth. It's so much better. Like,
how many cards does it draw, Tomer? 0.
It's going to ramp out. Like if you're properly building a deck that draws a lot of cards, and you want the Thran Dynamo because you want to cast those spells as quickly as possible, right? If Thran Dynamo does it so much more efficiently, 33% more efficiently.
If you really think about it, Thran Dynamo gives you 33% more mana, which that is something, but Hedron Archive gives you like 1,000,000% more cards, quite literally, because it goes from 0 to 2. So yeah,
it does draw more cards than a Thran Dynamo. So
that's true.
That is actually true.
So in terms of the
Checkmate.
Hedron Archive scale, I think Mindstone is by far the best because it taps for what is a 2 mana rock that taps for 1, which is on rate for 2 mana rocks. You know, they all tap for 1. That's what they do.
That's fair.
Colorless is yeah. Then the next best one, it is one that I'll run in budget decks, not non-budget decks, but budget decks, is actually Commander Sphere, and that's the closest Hedron Archive that I'll actually run that's not Hedron Archive. 3 mana rock, taps for 1 of any color of your commander's colors, so it's mana fixing, and you can sacrifice it to draw a card. However, it doesn't require you to pay 2 mana and tap it to sacrifice. So what you can even do is you can like tap it for mana, and then sacrifice it and draw a card, and then use that mana. Or like, you know, like you're tapped out and somebody Vandal Blasts in the board or Austere commands, you can always sacrifice it at any given time. You're never going to be in a situation where, you know, you're tapped out and somebody destroys all your artifacts and you don't have the mana to sacrifice your Hedron Archive or something like that. You're always gonna get that value. So tempo-wise, it's really, really good. It's very mana efficient. Is it great as a 3 mana rock? No, it's not the best, but on a budget, I will run it. I value the flexibility of card draw there, but not when I need to pay 2 mana and tap it to sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. No, thank you. Bad.
Okay, so I have to ask you one more thing, Tomer. Yeah. This card's not going to come up. We rated this card. It's called Firemind's Vessel. It's a 4 mana rock. It enters a battlefield tapped, and it taps to add 2 mana, except it's 2 different colors of mana. Mm-hmm. You have that rated a tier ahead of Hedron Archive. Yep. I'm like super.
Yep.
So I don't understand that.
How in the world does the tapped one that can't possibly draw you a card rank a tier higher than the untapped one that does potentially draw you a card?
At least it taps for mana. If I'm in like a 5-color deck and I'm desperate for more mana fixing, then I'll run that. Maybe. It has to be a 5-color deck though, or a 4-color at the very least.
4 mana, you would do that?
Yeah, it's like, you know what, it's also a D. You know what, you got okay. Me. It's also a D.
I was hoping that would get you to bump Hedron Archive up a little bit, but I will accept you bumping that down.
It's a bad explosive vegetation.
I actually forgot it enters tap, so I'm actually lowering my grade on that. So that's dropping a D.
Just try it.
At least I played it.
If you're watching this podcast, throw a Hedron Archive into your deck and just see. If I'm wrong and you hate it, you can take it back out. You can replace it with all the Firemind Vessels in the world. But just give it a try and wait for that game where you're desperate and you draw the cards and you win because of Hedron Archive. It will happen. I promise you. It will.
Win because of Hedron Archive. Okay. All right. This Hedron Archive does it all. Apparently, it also walks my dog and my taxes. What? Hold on. It does not. It's not that good. Relax.
Well, the cards that you draw off of it. The cards that you draw off of it when you're empty-handed, like that can give you the wrath you need to stabilize or whatever. It happens. It does.
I will
But
give
then you don't
this,
have the mana to cast it anymore. Like,
That's garbage. Yeah, and then you draw cards and you're like, oh, I wish I had extra mana to cast these things on curve. Oh, I sacrificed it for my overcosted bad mana rock.
I mean, I have Hedron Archive at D, and to be fair, it should be a D plus probably.
Wow.
I'd still not play it, but yeah, it comes into play untapped. Although, not sure how many times you actually spend the 2 colorless mana on turn 4 there, but sure. And yeah, you can sacrifice it. I just don't like the play pattern. The Rampart is actually kind of cool, but then Thran Dynamo does a better job at this. And then, yeah, if you sacrifice it, it's at a very high cost. Like, tempo-wise, it's not that crazy card draw. If you want a mana rock that draws cards, play Midnight Clock or something. Mm-hmm. Or other cards on this list.
But at 4+, like we're comparing these down to like 3.
That's
right?
true.
Like,
it's not really fair to be like, oh, Mind Stone's better.
Sure.
It's like, oh, Soul Ring's better. Of course, it's better. It's 1 mana.
Yeah.
So like at the 4 cost, and you're specifically looking at the 4 cost, I do think that Hedron Archive just having another mode makes it better than like Thran Dynamo and Firemind Vessel, right? Like Firemind Vessel, I forgot its tap, so it's much worse than both the previously mentioned cards. Thran Dynamo makes the 3rd mana cool, but like the versatility, right? Why would you not want something that has another mode? So if you're going to play one of these cards in one of these situations, I will take the hit on the 1 less mana and have an alternative mode for when I don't need mana rocks. Right? Like I don't see the reason why you'd want something that is so like just like one track, like kind of one trick kind of thing, right? Like if I don't need mana, I want to know that I can draw cards. Hedron Archive, come on, versatility, that's pretty good. It's like a command in mana rocks ish. Modal. It's modal.
It's MDFC. It's an MDFC. The MDFC of mana rocks.
All right.
Actually,
My
I
blood
bumped it up
pressure
to
can't.
C just because the other one's at
God.
4. It's just as bad as Thran Dynamite.
That's a win.
and
That's a win.
Dynamo and
We're
Firemind
getting there.
Special.
Yeah, well,
Another
calm
year of the
down,
podcast.
Calm down, Calm down. All right, it's still a C. Relax.
Another year or two, and you'll have it S's. Give me time. I'm still working on you.
The only time I enjoyed playing Hedron Archive was in my Kozilek deck, which I still will run it in Kozilek. But I discarded it to counter a spell, and that was the only use for Hedron Archive. The fact that it was a 4 mana value. It did win me the game. So, you know what? There's the best use for it is not casting it and actually discarding it, which is exactly what D is. I hope to discard this. Boom. D. Definition of D. All right. We'll move on. Krim, what do you got for us for mana rock in quotation?
Okay. So, mana rock in quotations. let me go over why there's in quotations, all right?
I agree with you, by the way. I agree with you, bro, with this mana rock.
Okay, so Bolas is Citadel. Now, I think this is, I consider this a mana rock. I know that, so it is 3 and triple black legendary artifact. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You play the top card of your library. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than pay the mana cost. And then, of course, sack 10 non-land permanents. Each opponent loses 10 life. So, first off, this is like you get to look at the top card of your deck, right? And then you get to play anything off the top. In Commander, we already know that 40 life is a lot of life to play with. So, although it doesn't directly produce mana, it allows me to cheat mana kind of like in a way, it does put me ahead. Like it kind of feels like it does produce mana because I'm just using my life to use as mana instead of, actually having mana. And then, of course, why not have the mode to just also drain the table or hit the table for 10? So, is this not a mana rock? Does this not do kind of what these other things are doing, but even better? For 6 mana, I get to just use, like, example, if I get to cast an Ugin, I take 8. Seth, think about it like this. That's like tapping 4 Hedron Archives. Right there. For the price of 8 life. Is this
and
not
drawing
just
cards off it?
Yeah,
because
and
it's
you
not
draw
in your
cards.
hand. It's off the top of your library.
Exactly. Yes, maybe there's the off chance that, or I mean, like maybe you get stuck, right? You just don't make sure the turn you're deploying Citadel, you don't play your land. So you can play the land off the top of your deck. And if you get hit again, well, have a fetch land or something, maybe. So this card it's a finisher. It's a card advantage. It is, like it hurts a lot, but you know what? Hey, greatness at any cost, right?
I have a hard time thinking of it as a mana rock. I think you're right that the effect that it has on the game is similar. It is kind of generating mana by letting you pay Phyrexian mana for everything, essentially, or pay life for everything. I guess I'll buy that it's a mana rock. It doesn't work the same as a traditional mana rock, and part of what complicates it is I feel like, unlike Hedron Archive, where you play it to make mana, and then you get the option of maybe drawing cards when things go wrong, I think a big reason to play Bolas the Citadel is to draw cards, probably. The card advantage is a big part of what makes it good, right? Because it's not like you get to cast spells from your hand using... with life instead of mana. So it really is kind of I don't know, as much card advantage engine as it is mana engine. So
it's a really good mana rock.
I think it's a good card. It's definitely a very good card.
We agree that it is a good card, right? I think it's safe to say that we agree it's a good card, but it does functionally what your mana rock does, right? Because I mean, it may not traditionally do what a mana rock does, but when you break it down, it is a mana rock. It's essentially just give all your spells, Phyrexian cost, as you had mentioned, and allow that. That's really good.
I've never built one of the strongest cards in Commander, right?
I mean, we agree it's a powerhouse, right? Yeah, it is a powerhouse, but is it not a mana rock?
I'll just say, when I build decks, I usually try to make sure I have so many ramp spells in my deck, based on Tomer's checklist that you can probably find on the internet, where you got so many lands and then you need 10, 12 mana rocks. Personally, when I build a deck, I have never added Bolas to Citadel and stuck it in my Soul Ring, Signet, in that pile. So I think I agree with what Krim's saying, but I've just never thought of the card in that way before. It's always in a card draw slot or a finisher slot or something like that. So I will buy that it's a mana rock, but it's a new way of thinking for me because I've never considered it that before.
I think it's both. I agree that I would consider it a mana rock with the second. And again, for the viewers, we stretch the definition because otherwise, if we're strictly mana rocks that have to tap to add mana, we would have 5 things to talk about, and it would be a very short and boring podcast. But we want to basically show everybody other options that will generate mana and be considered ramp, and that's why we kind of loosen the definition. And I think it is equally important for Bolas Citadel. I don't just see it as a card advantage. I think it is equally mana advantage because it's very different from just saying, draw 3 cards. Because if you draw 3 cards, then you still have to spend the mana to actually cast those cards. And that might mean you won't be able to cast those cards this turn, or maybe not even cast all of them the next turn. But Bolas Citadel basically says, no, you get to draw those cards and you get to put them on the battlefield immediately, and you don't have to spend the mana for it. Don't worry, bro. As long as you have the life to pay for it, you're good. Or as long as you don't whiff on, lands, then you're good. So I think it is equally. Yeah, and it's an artifact. So it fits our definition. I think it's equal. It's both card advantage and ramp equal 50-50.
How often do you guys play this card? I was looking at my deck list and I realized that I don't actually play Bolas Citadel that often. It's not a card that every black deck I jam it into. Should I be doing that? If you got black mana, you should just be jamming it and YOLOing.
Yeah, you just get killed is the problem. I mean, that's the most threatening thing you could do is say, hey, I'm probably going to win next turn. Aren't you just going to kill the person who plays this as a Sensei's Divining Top and it's over, right? Pretty much.
I mean, yeah,
combo very easily.
Yeah. It's a bit like Earthcraft, which is also very good just to ramp, but nobody's going to believe you that, I'm just going to use this as a mana rock.
True.
I mean, people will kill you regardless of if this is going to combo off in your deck, right? Because it's just the mana advantage, right? Like the ability to just pop off and reload your own board. But, That's
it's
a
bit
pretty
like
good
channel
mana rock.
gameplay wise. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
It's like
pretty
if you-
good. And you can go off the turn you play it. Right?
Yeah.
Like right then and there.
Yeah, like you could just whiff, you could just not do anything with it, but like more often than not, they're just it's going to be a random situation where you cast 6 spells off it, you lose half your life or whatever, but like you just cast 6 spells, chain them all together, and you're in a winning position.
I will say maybe, Seth, you should be cautious what deck you put it in, because I know Seth likes to never turn down. Like, if there's an action, Seth will take it, right? Like,
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm taking the 6 on Black Market
Black
Connection
Market
every
Connection
time.
Seth, maybe you didn't need to cast it. No. We're casting it off the top.
It's free value.
Are you like trying to add life gain to your, like, do you build around this card, I guess is my question. Like, are you like, okay, I got Bolas' Citadel, so I got to get like a Grey Merchant in my deck, or I got to have like stuff like this to replenish my life total? Or are you just like, I'm in black, jam this in there, it's gonna do it for me?
Usually, like, I feel like, again, there's just that option where I don't have to use it, right? Like I could just... I know.
That way,
I know. Seth,
It's just going to sit there.
have a
taunting
breather.
you.
Take a breather. I'm gonna. It's the hidden Liliana of the Veil mode. You don't have to activate her. Yes, you don't have to cast the thing off the top. So, yeah, I do think that you should have a little bit of life gain, but I feel like that's the case of almost any deck. Like, just have a little bit of something to bring you back into a game. But yeah, like, I don't know. I don't think this is necessarily a build around. It's just a good engine on its own. Yeah, it's going to suck if everybody beats you up in the early game and then you draw this. But, whatever.
I'm going to have to play it more.
I think I played it once, but I do think I played it in a commander. I'm not sure about this, but I think I remember I played it in commander that actually gained life. Because if you just keep a cushion of life, then all this is actually free. I mean, you could play Aetherflux Reservoir and make it very free at some point,
Yes.
and then
You throw in a Sense of Divining Top and Aetherflux,
then
and
it's
that's
over.
like the de facto combo. But like you're in black, you'll have a Gary. There's like 3 black pips in this, so if Gary, that's 5 to each opponent. That's 15 life swing. You're fine.
I think it's
good.
the only mark against it that I could see is that it is triple black. However, if you have black mana, it doesn't matter if it's 5 color, whatever. I usually play an Urborg.
Yeah.
So, and like if you're in 5 color, usually you're like, I wouldn't say this is like an auto include in 5 color or anything like that. I don't even think this is like an auto include in every deck, but it is really good. Like, if you have black, I would at least look at it and consider it if any of my decks play black at all. And usually, more often than not, I think it's worth it. So,
I agree.
it's just a good card, yeah. Is it a mana rock?
it is. I think it is.
It is for the sake of this podcast, all right?
That we
Speaking
know.
of stretching the definition, Phil, what do you got for us?
I mean, I'm stretching the definition as well here a bit. Primal Amulet. 4 mana artifact, instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And here comes the best part. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a charge counter on the amulet. Then, if there are 4 or more charge counters on it, you may remove these counters and transform it into Primal Wellspring, a land that taps for any color of mana. And when you cast an instant or sorcery with it, it copies and you can choose new targets. I absolutely love this card. It obviously just mana rocks or mana ramps for instant and sorcery, so it is still a B for me, I think. Pretty
B's
sure
all
it
around.
should be it. Yeah,
Everybody
it should be a
gave it
B
a
all
B.
around. It's very build-aroundy or archetype specific. But boy, is a transformed Wellspring is pretty scary. And it ramps you. At this point, it really ramped you because you get a land, but it also doubles up your time warps or whatever thing you want to do with it. Man, this card.
Dirty.
Yeah.
Right to the extra turn spells.
I wouldn't do it in Commander, but I did a lot of Primal Amulet. Not in Commander, but man, in 1v1, I'm extra turning with this all day. I'm not ashamed, especially if there's no game chat on Arena. I mean, that's Wizards' fault at this point. If I have to justify it in a game chat, I probably wouldn't play extra turns. But
you just mute the emotes and you're fine. What can they do?
What
can they do? I get all the turns. I got a question for you guys. I like Primal Amulet too, but I was looking at it on EDH Rec, and it doesn't seem like people consider it a Spellslinger staple. Because I was thinking if I'm Spellslinger, I should probably just play this all the time. EDH Rec has it at 2% of decks, and it's really not played over 50% of the time in hardly any decks. Some number of VRAN decks play it, and other Calamax, but it's 30%, 40%. So it doesn't seem like a card that people have fully embraced as a staple. Why is that, do you think? Why doesn't this see more play, I guess, is my question. Because I would have assumed this was hey, if I'm Spellslinger, just jam into my deck and it's going to be great. But apparently other people don't necessarily see it the same way we do.
I think, at least my guess at that is that it's relatively on the pricier side, right? It's $12 or something. It's $10 bucks.
I think it went up recently, yeah.
It's so it's not cheap enough to where, whatever, throw that in there, right? But on top of when I'm starting to look at anything $10+ that I'm throwing into my deck, that's when I'm okay. Oh well, is this an effect I really need, right? And for 4 mana, it comes in at a spot where I'm okay, if I do all these things, I get it to flip, then it works. Spellslinger decks, 90% of the time don't ever tap out, right? I actually don't believe that Primal Amulet is great in that. It's very it's a solid card in Spellslinger, but I actually feel there's other commanders where the mana reduction feels nice. So one of the decks is Zevlor. That's not exactly a Spellslinger deck for me, but it is Spellslinger adjacent. That's where the mana reduction's okay, I like that. But I don't know, maybe a Spellslinger deck just has more efficient ways to go about it in Goblin Electromancers, Barals, and things like that, and that's way cheaper on the curve.
Mm-hmm. I actually think the problem is something else, probably. I think most people see Spellslinger as Izzet colors, and Izzet colors don't really ramp with spells, so you usually want to ramp on turn 2 in Commander, and then you play an artifact, and that's not a spell, especially in Izzet colors. And then you're stuck with an artifact that you play that's still not a spell, and then you get rewarded for casting spells, but your commander is a creature. So when I play Primal Amulet, I usually play it in Timur colors. So I have green ramp spells like Explore, or in Commander we had a lot more like Farseek and stuff. If you can ramp with spells, Primal Amulet gets way cooler because you can play it on turn 3, and then so probably Izzet Spellslinger is actually not the place for it, but more green-based Spellslingers like Simic can make great use of it. Love me some Simic, but yeah, I think it's probably better in.
Or actually, I feel
it's just you fill your deck up with non-spells with Artifact Ramp, and then there's a lot of payoffs for Spellslinging, and Primal Amulet is probably not the best one. So maybe not Spellslinger, but Simic value spell decks that gain maybe Spellcraft or whatever the mechanic was called. Maybe that's the reason. I still think that 2% is kind of low. Maybe people haven't played with it. It might not be that powerful, but it's very fun. So if you play a deck like this, just give it a try and maybe turn that 2% up a little bit. But I can't imagine it being the composition of decks. Ramp is not a spell, and then you have to play another artifact, and
the front side is kind of underwhelming. If you're just looking at the front side, we have 2 mana, two drops that do the same thing of the mana discount. So Baral, Goblin Electromancer. There's a couple of them that basically have that text. So Primal Amulet at 4 is double the cost, so that's not appealing. And then the flip side is incredible. It's ramp plus doubling every single time you tap it, which is really good. So I don't know, maybe the payoff is a little bit too slow because the front side is a little bit kind of bad, and it's at least $10, so it's harder for you to just kind of jam and try it out.
That makes some sense, adding all those things together, and it is it is underwhelming if you don't get to the backside, like you said. If you just see this, like, it comes down pretty late. It's only a 1 mana cost reduction. But the backside is really good. And I think that all these Ixalan cards that flip into lands, not many of them actually qualify for our list, because some are enchantment, some are less than 4 mana. But they are pretty sneaky ways to get ramp into colors that you normally wouldn't have it. I think that that's worth keeping in mind for ramp in general. I almost wish we did a podcast like a few weeks ago about best ramp by other colors, and I think we might have missed by not like talking about something like Search for His Content in blue or whatever, that these things that end up flipping into a land. So I think we might have even underrated some of those.
Yeah, they're sneaky ramp cards, like you said. Like, they do flip into actual lands, and sometimes the flip cost is very low. Like, Search for His Content is incredibly low to get it to flip, and its activability is quite good. And the front side's, like, pretty decent, too, so... Yeah. All right. I'm going to move on to a card that I feel like it's kind of to honor Richard a little bit. It's a card that a lot of us were down on, but I think Richard will be really happy to see that most of us have rated a little bit higher these days. And this is the much maligned Coveted Jewel. This is a 6-mana colorless artifact that has one interesting ability in terms of ramp, and then one interesting ability that can be seen as a downside. So when it enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards, which is huge, and then you can tap it to add 3 mana of any one color, which is kind of like a Gilded Lotus, which is the 5-drop. But the downside is that whenever one or more creatures an opponent controls attack you and aren't blocked, that player draws 3 cards and gains control of Coveted Jewel, and they untap it. So 6 mana, colorless, ETB, draw 3 cards, taps for 3 of any color immediately, doesn't enter the battlefield untapped. All amazing stuff, but if you do get attacked and don't block, then the attacker gets control of it. And interestingly, if you asked us, I think 2 years ago, a year ago, even a year ago, actually, we would rate these pretty low, except for Richard, who would give it S++. I think we did talk about this card at some point, rated it in some regard. We rated it low. But this time around, me and Phil, we're on the highest on it with A, and Krim and Seth, you're still pretty high on it with a B. So B's and A's for this card that we long ago would say pretty bad. What changed your opinions on this card? Do you think you like it more than you did now, or have you always been pretty high on it?
Oh, a year ago, this would have been a D, probably. Literally do not play it under any circumstances. And what changed my opinion was watching Richard go off with it repeatedly. It's really just playing with Richard. And he similar to Dowsing Dagger, but to a lesser extent. He figures out these cards that no one else really plays that much of, and then he plays them in a way that makes them look really, really good. The other thing is, it's just a fun card. Monarch is my favorite mechanic in all of Commander, and that doesn't necessarily make Coveted Jewel good, but it really is kind of like Super Monarch. The way it plays once it's on the battlefield is that same, passing around the table, giving people cards, incentivizing people to attack. So I always have fun when it hits the battlefield. It's like the opposite of Bolas' Citadel. When you see a Bolas' Citadel, you're like, oh no, I better kill this person, they're about to win the game. When you see Coveted Jewel, you're like, oh, that's kind of sweet. How can I steal that? How can I get the cards out of this? And so I've really been sold just by watching Richard play, and that's why it's B, because it's good in Richard decks. I don't know if it's actually good in any other decks, but if Richard's playing it, it always looks insane.
I love that we call it Richard decks, but they're just Richard was the only one every season that would put something on the board early and hit us. And that was, wow, what is this archetype where you use the combat step? What is this?
Yeah. Why does this downside not exist for Richard? Because he keeps stealing it back.
Pop off because he just has a board.
He's the only one who is in a position to attack to get the Jeweled Lotus. Or the Coveted Jewel, rather.
I mean, this card is a B to a high C for me. And this airs to more I guess the low B side. But I do like it as a fun card. This is a very fun card to add to the table. When this drops, it like Seth had mentioned, it just feels good to have Super Monarch running around. But at the same time, I guess there's tons of ways where you see people flicker this, blink this, but I don't know. At 6 mana, this is pretty decent. I think this is like not bad. It's a pretty good card. It's a fun card, and at the very least, I think the table will have a fun time trying to get aggressive as possible and finding a way to just have creatures.
Yeah, I mean, I actually ordered this card just because of the fun factor, and I didn't get to play it yet, but I have it at A because the deck I play it in is just Omnath, which doesn't make any sense, but it just played in any deck is an A. So yeah, it's just insanely fun. And I've seen so many times now the table just beats each other up about it, and it's at least fun. And if you politic correctly, it could be very good. And if you can flicker it, it's actually very legit. Like, of course, it's 6 mana up front, but then it taps for 3. And then if you can flicker it cost efficiently, or even sacrifice it and reanimate it or something, it's like the downside isn't as bad as you think, because it's like psychological terror to the board, which is a positive as well. It's just a super fun card. A might be a bit high, but I mean, I'm playing it in a 4-color landfall deck, so I guess put it in any deck.
Well, it is Omnath, and you do play green, so is it that hard to get?
I mean, it's not
It's easy to throw in some pet cards in there.
6 drops are like really 4 drops in green, and on top of that, let's not lie here, Omnath is powerful enough to make it.
Omnath makes 5 by itself?
Yeah.
For sneezing?
Yeah, like just doing what you were gonna do, Omnath will get you there. You'll be fine.
Exhaling softly, make 5 mana.
I think you can run it for fun in every deck, just like because of the impact it has on the game. But from a more like competitive maybe perspective, I think it's especially good in certain decks, which is why I have it to be like Orvar copying it. There's red artifact decks that are good at like sacking it and reanimating it, like Solad or Osgir are really good with that. So I also like Zedru or Blim, things that can give it away and then you can steal it back if you want to. So I think those are the decks that I'm like, especially, I think it's actually like legitimately good in those decks. I think I jam it in decks where I probably shouldn't if my goal is to win, just because I like how it plays and it's like a pet card and it's fun. But I think that from a perspective of trying to win games, I think those decks in specific can make really good use out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've always had it at least at like a B, I think, because of the reasons that it is actually good in pretty decent archetypes. Like, I always ran it in red artifact decks, like you mentioned, like Goblin Welder. So you can either sacrifice it once you get that, if you're in a situation where someone's going to attack you and you can't block with it, you can sacrifice to get another artifact from your graveyard and put that on the battlefield. Or if you have any ways of putting it into the graveyard, then you can cheat it out into play with Goblin Welder by just tapping it, a 1-drop tapping it and getting it back onto the battlefield by sacrificing some, just like a treasure token or something. So like, it's really good there. Blink, obviously, like you said, is really good. And you also mentioned Zedru. I put it in Zedru deck specifically for that because, like, yeah, I have ETB trigger. I have flicker abilities in my deck, and also if somebody just takes the Coveted Jewel, that actually works in my favor because I'm not going to go take it back. I want people to fight over the jewel, and yeah, I'm not going to be tapping it for 3 mana each turn, but I'm going to be drawing a card and getting a life off Zedru, so I'm still winning off that, and also I'm getting the heat off me at the same time. Like, go fight for the Super Monarchy. I'll just be here quietly drawing my cards, gaining life, dirtling away, and nobody's attacking me. It's great. So yeah, I think this card's like, and it's just super fun. Yeah, it's just super fun. I love this card. It's a fun for the table, and it gets people aggressive.
Is it okay, so I originally looked at this card as a goes in certain archetypes, but then I think about it, it's like, is the number of archetypes that could still use it is a lot. So at what point does that just make it a very good card to put into like anything that plays creatures? Because you have those decks, but then I also play in my Merfolk deck. I play it in my Rogues deck, right? Because they're little tiny unblockable dudes. So I know I can get these back, right? So it kind of seems just good in a creature archetype, which is
sounds
a
like
lot.
An A or an S.
So then maybe that means it goes up to an A.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
although
right,
you're still giving your opponent advantage too, though. Like, that's kind of the
yes.
It's great that you're getting it back, but your opponents are also, it gets a little group huggy at some points. Where your opponents are also like, "Oh, I get 3 cards.
Yeah.
In Crim decks with Notion Thief, then it's all. Then that's for sure. But.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, you're right. And they're all blue and black. So yeah, I might go up to an A. I'm gonna put it up to an A Because if I play creatures, even if like I don't have the Notion Thief, I think it's still pretty darn good. Like, we just named a ton of archetypes that could use it, and the only criteria is that you play creatures.
Yeah. I'm still to be. I still think it's more specific archetypes, but...
Oh, let us know in the comment section. What do you think about Cason or Coveted Jewel? Are we too high on it now? Or do you agree that Richard was right all along? We'll find out. But we'll move on, though, for the sake of time. Seth, what's your second card on your list?
All right. I got a new one for y'all, which is Sarevok's Tome. It is a Commander Legends Baldur's Gate card. It's 4 mana. When it enters a battlefield, you take the initiative. It taps to add 1 generic mana, or if you have the initiative, 2 generic mana, and then you can pay 3 to tap it, exile the top card of your library until you exile a non-land card, and you can cast that card without paying its mana value, without paying its mana cost, but only do that if you've completed a dungeon. So this is a card that I have ranked as a B. I see Phil has it as a C, Tomer and Krim have it as Ds. I've gained a new respect for this card. We haven't got to play too much with Initiative because it wasn't on Magic Online for a long time, and this card is still not on Magic Online. But a couple of weekends ago, I went to this Commander Sealed charity event thing where we were playing Paper Magic and actually got to play with Initiative cards in a Commander-like format. It was Commander Sealed, but still, it was very similar to Commander. And I was kind of impressed because the first mode of the Undercity, the dungeon that you go into when you get initiative, is search for a basic land card and put it in your hand, which is a pretty nice ability. So even though this mana rock, if you don't have the initiative, is a little bit lacking because it's only adding 1 mana, the fact that you get that land to generate card advantage, make sure you hit your next land drop, I think that helps make up for it. And then I love that Hedron Archive can give you the ability to draw some cards by sacking it if you can complete a dungeon, which if you're some sort of initiative deck, you probably should be able to because it's only like 5 levels to get through the Undercity. Then this becomes very strong. Pay 3 to exile the top card of your library and cast it for free, like a Mind's Desire style effect, is actually really, really good. So my ranking is mostly a product of being impressed with Initiative. I think Initiative is better than I gave it credit for now that I've actually been able to play with it a little bit and see how it feels and plays in practice. So what do you guys think? I know, still not very high on Initiative.
Honestly, I didn't think about the first mode of Initiative. I'm not sure if it's a B, but that's way better than I had it in my head. I just assumed this is probably like a Scry or something, but the Initiative is actually better than the dungeons, right? And it works by itself. Yeah, I guess I'd give it a B. I mean, we will never play with it anyways, but it seems fun.
We were talking about Coveted Jewel and how it encourages attacking, and it's like a super monarchy. And Sarevok's Tomb is kind of like that, because Initiative also is just like it's a new, more complicated version of monarchy.
Yeah.
There is a difference, though. The difference here is, well, first of all, if you don't have the initiative, Sarevok's Tomb is a 4 mana, search your library for a basic land, then tap it to add 1 mana, which is like, it makes Hedron Archive look good in that regard.
Although you get the initiative when it comes into play. So the first turn you do get the 2. So
you get to search your library. So 4 mana, search your library for a basic land, put it into your hand, and it taps for 2. And then if you lose initiative, it starts tapping for 1, which is not great. And your opponents also get the initiative, so they benefit from that too. But I like fighting over that, so I'm not taking a point for that. But then the other bad thing is that now you've introduced initiative into the game. And now you have to bust out the initiative cards, and you have to explain people who really do not want to learn about the initiative mechanic what the initiative mechanic is, and then they constantly have to be like, all right, what do I do now with this mechanic that I didn't play Baldur's Gate, I don't know what this is doing, and then you like stop the game to explain the initiative mechanic for 1 card, and do you really want to subject it to people? I like the initiative mechanic, by the way. I think it's a good mechanic, except compared to Monarchy is just like, oh yeah, you have the crown and you draw a card, and people are like, makes sense. And for this one, you're like, all right, let's bust out. It's like somebody bringing a new board game to the table, but it's like super complicated. And it's like their pet thing. It's like, no, you'll really like it. You just have to spend a couple hours understanding it. And you're like, bust out the cards, and you give everybody an initiative card, and you explain everything, and they get it wrong, and you're like, oh no, it actually works like this. And it's like all for Sarevok's too. For for one mana rock. Is it worth it, Seth? Is it worth it?
I will say there were multiple judge calls about initiative at the charity event that I was at. So it is actually legitimately like kind of confusing especially if you've never played with it before. So I wonder it's not worth it. Although, go ahead, Grim.
Well, how many of those judge calls were just like people not knowing that it triggers on the upkeep and then asking, "Can I miss this?" Like
that was part of it, and part of it was people trying to figure out the interaction between initiative and like old school dungeons, the original ones. Like, do you just keep going through the same room? Can you go to a different room? So they probably could have worded it in a better way. I will say, I think this at least deserves a B for the specific deck thing, because I feel like this should be a staple mana rock if you're playing a dungeon deck. Just because if you're playing a Sarevok or some sort of deck that's built to finishing dungeons, then I think that last mode of being able to like maybe manipulate the top of your deck and get something on top of it and cast it for free, like that seems like a big enough payoff to make it worth it. Even though you are right that if you're only making one mana with it, it's pretty sad. But I think in a dedicated dungeon deck where you like, I know I'm going to complete a dungeon very easily with my deck, then I think it's probably worth it.
Well, there's night and day with this card. It's not the mechanic. It is literally the worst card, probably the worst card in your deck, or in a dungeon deck. It's like pretty good.
But even then though, like. It taps for 4, or no, it taps for 2, sorry. It only taps for 2, and then you have to pay 3 and tap it. So you're essentially, like, if you have the initiative and you've already completed a dungeon, you're basically spending 5 mana to just, like, randomly get the first non-land card off the top of your library and cast it. And, like, if you hit, a Mind Stone or something, then it feels like Juju. Like,
what if you hit a... But if you hit a Hedron Archive,
actually,
then you're in business.
You know what?
Oh, God.
Even in a dungeon deck, I think I would probably put this at a C now.
Yeah, I don't
because there's too many. The main reason why I didn't like it to begin with is there's too many moving parts to this card, right? Like you have initiative, then it adds an additional mana. So yeah, like most often I feel like I'm just not gonna have it add 2 mana. You get the one land and like, whatever, but then now everybody else kind of just catches up with you, right? Or maybe you're helping out the one person that's like color screwed. So then you're like, I don't know. I think introducing initiative is fun for the table, but like if it messes with how much mana I just, like that it produces on the 4 mana rock I just sunk mana into, and then like the activated ability, I love Chaos Wand, but you've also seen where Chaos Wand just loses me so many games because I hit Painful Truths like 50 times. So, like, I don't know. There's too many moving parts to this card for me to like at 4 mana. There's too many ifs.
I will say,
what happens.
It should be better Chaos Wand because you control it. One of the issues with Chaos Wand is you're going at your opponent's decks and you don't know what's in their decks. But in theory, you can build your deck in a way that minimizes the Painful Truce problem or whatever. You can't minimize the like hit a random mana rock. That's still kind of sad. But you should be able to build your deck in a way where you're not hitting like stone whiffs with this if you decide to put it in your deck.
I don't know, the random like I play Chaos Wand and the whatever the wand from Baldur's Gate. I love those wands. The Wand of Wonder.
Oh yes.
Because of the random, right? But like, are they efficient cards? I don't know. I wouldn't say they're the most efficient. Maybe Wand of like Wonder, but like Chaos Wand is truly that, right? And so I don't know if I like that attached. Like, there's a lot of things that have to happen for this to be good.
Yeah, I just think the play pattern works a little better than you'd expect. Like when I first read the card, I never heard about it first of all, but then I read it for this list and I thought, nah, that's clunky. But now that Seth is saying it like this, like imagine playing this and then wiping the board, and then next upkeep you get the second room of the dungeon, and then you get this mana rock that taps for 2. I mean, not that this is that good, but yeah, it seems pretty solid. I'd love to try it out, and maybe I would change my grade or keep it at B. It seems at least very fun.
If you wipe the board and you go to the second room, you get to scry 2.
Sure.
It's not like.
I mean, it sounds pretty good to me. Like
the final room is very good. The final room is very good. You reveal the top 10 cards. You put a creature card from among them on the battlefield with 3 counters on them, and it gets hexproof until next turn. So like that can be good. But
I mean, you can go search for a land, scry 2, goad something, draw a card, then the mode you just mentioned where you get a free creature. That's not a bad progression through a dungeon.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
No, it's not bad.
although it is true that it's Monarch style, so your opponents also could be progressing
Yeah.
through the dungeon as well, which is a little bit of a drawback. But
I
also
like
part of
that
the
because,
fun.
like, yeah, that's what I liked about Coveted Jewel. I didn't really ding it for that. It's just more like the complexity of it, like versus Monarch, which is just like, oh yeah, you just if you have the crown, end step, you
Yeah.
draw a card, and they're like, yes, very good, I can do this. Where everybody else is like,
Yeah, it's not as bad as Night and Day, but yeah, Thomas right. This, if you don't know what the initiative is, first of all, it's super like taking the initiative, but it's actually a dungeon, and yeah, you go through it every upkeep.
Yeah,
What happens if you go through with it? Can you start from the beginning?
you start from the
Again?
beginning. Yes.
yeah, back through from the top.
When you
I didn't
get to the
played the
final room,
preludes,
you've
still
completed
don't
the
know it.
dungeon as well, so that triggers or that activates the last part of the tome. It's a thing. It's a thing. But we'll move on. For Krim, your second card on the list.
My second card is Chromatic Orrery. So by now, if you don't know what Chromatic Orrery is, it's a 7 mana artifact, and it itself taps. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color, and it taps for 5 colorless, and you could spend 5 colorless and tap it. Draw a card for each color among permanents you control. So I have this card rated at a B, and I sort of like everyone else. I do think this card though is like when we start looking at bigger like mana rocks and things like that, I think this card does quite a bit. It adds 5 first off, and it's 5 colors, which normally would be a down like kind of a drawback, but it fixes my mana, so I really do like that. The ability to just go and get to be able to cast ultimatums off colorless mana is pretty sick. This card gets I have it at a B but it feels like it could almost be an A. It's obviously not good in monocolor. And it's like medium in 2 colors. Like it's actually like not that great either for 7 mana. But once we start looking at 3+ colors, this is very powerful. Like this is like just paying 5 mana to draw 3 without sacking it is amazing. Fixing my mana colors, I love that because I fought for, of course, Chromatic Lantern. So this is just like super Chromatic Lantern. Why wouldn't you want this? This seems really good. And it comes down and you're able to immediately use it for 5 mana.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes it cost 2 mana in a weird way because you get that
Right.
5 mana
Hedron
back right away.
Archive.
So if you get to 7, you get it for 2 mana because you get 5 mana back. I like this card a lot, but I only play it in 5 color. For me, it's like a 5 color staple. One of the first cards that I added to my deck in 5 color. I can see the argument for 3 color, I guess, but I feel like most of my 3 color decks, I don't need the fixing as much in drawing 3. It's fine. I'm not going to complain. I'll crack my Hedron Archives and draw 2, so any card draw is good. But considering the 7 mana investment up front, drawing 3 is like, it's kind of like the lowest possible bar to get over for this card. So for me, it's like 5 color auto include, 4 color probably, 3 color, that's where I'm kind of like, and below that, no.
I'm like the opposite.
I don't even really care about the color fixing in a weird way. I do play it mostly in Historic Brawl is where I play it the most. I'm not sure if I ever played it in Commander actually, but probably because I don't think about it. But I love how it plays. Like you play this and then play like I'm sorry, I won't do this in Commander, but you can play a Time Warp afterwards and then
Fill in
take a
its
turn with
time
5
warps
extra.
every time.
I'm ruthless in 1v1. I don't care if you complain. But
rope you every
it's
time,
just such a huge mana burst for the next turn. Sure, you have to survive, but if you play this, it's not like you tapped out, but you have 5 mana back, and it's 5 mana of any color, so you could play. You usually can play something pretty powerful afterwards. It just feels not as clunky to play with as you'd expect, and if you untap with it, it's going to be a pretty good turn.
Yeah, if you untap
unless you spend your mana cracking a Hedron Archive, then it's probably not the best use of that mana. But I love the card.
Seth, you wouldn't pay like 5 mana to like you wouldn't Jace's Ingenuity each turn. I feel like this is like even at its worst, right? Like when in 3-color decks, right? Like it is attached to 5 mana, and the fixing of your colors. This is pretty major. I don't know. I think there's a reason why in the trailer when Post Malone slams this down, the table concedes. Right.
Yeah, that's a bit weird, actually.
I mean, it still is 7 mana to get going. Like, this is a very late game plan, and like, Commander games go pretty fast these days. Like, the turns are getting shorter and shorter. The amount of turns that a game goes. So, that's the only downside for me. I feel like I got to be getting a real huge amount of value out of this for it to be worth it. So yeah, drawing 3 for 5, like I'm fine with that, but. Do I want to play a 7 mana rock to do that? I'm not 100% sure.
With how much treasure production is happening nowadays, like, is this really a 7-drop? I mean, I feel like this is also like coming down even easier for a lot of. But like in all seriousness, like just straight up on turn 7, pay 7. This isn't bad. Like this is very, very solid.
I see this more of a combo piece. Like I don't usually run this as a mana rock. Or card draw even. I don't think I've ever activated the card draw unless I'm comboing off. But like there's like so many ways. The fact that it taps for 5 mana and it's 5 of any color, it taps for 5 colors, but you can spend that mana as over mana of any color. Because of that, you basically have like 101 ways to combo off of it. Like Voltaic Key plus Rings of Brighthearth plus the Orrery. You can replace the Rings of Brighthearth with Kirkesh, which is like the red Rings of Brighthearth ability. There's like Filigree Sages, which is pay 3 mana, untap target artifact, and it makes 5, so you make infinite mana that way as well. And then once you have infinite mana, you could just activate its ability. If you have infinite mana, infinite ways of untapping it, you can just start untapping it and making drawing your deck. Tezzeret the Seeker and the Chain Veil and Orrery is also infinite. Littlorm Engine you can replace with the Chain Veil to also go infinite with Tezzeret. So it's like a billion ways. There's a billion ways to go off with the Orrery. It is an artifact. So again, if you're in an artifact deck that's like red base, Goblin Welder is just a 1-drop that you can tap, sacrifice whatever thing on your battlefield, any artifact on your battlefield, and put the Orrery, the 7-drop from your graveyard onto the battlefield. So that doesn't really matter to me. But yeah, I don't know. I don't usually run it as like a mana rock in a random deck. If I'm trying to combo off of it, then it's very tantalizing to me, and it's very flexible because it enables so many different types of combo lines.
It is a sweet combo piece, that's for sure. It's nice that it's the infinite mana combo piece, and it draws your deck all in one. You don't need an extra piece to like, oh, I got all the mana, now I got a whatever Blue Sun's Zenith to draw my deck. Like it does it all in one.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're not ready to combo off yet, that it does tap for 5. Like enters the battlefield untapped and taps for 5 and fixes your mana. So it's like it's not bad as a mana rock, I don't think. It's just that if I am running it, you know that it's not going to just be a mana rock. It is also going to be comboing off. At least in my deck, I don't know. Would you guys not run a combo with it? You would just run it fair?
I probably would, yeah.
I run it fairly, but I mean,
run it fairly.
If you're running it, you might as well throw a combo in, I guess. It's like easy enough to do, but I've run it without any combos before.
I definitely run without combos before. I mean, my 3-color decks, I've run it. I like my 3-color, like my Bolas deck, and then also my Dragons deck. Like it's. You
mean
sweet.
your Morophon deck?
Yes, my Dragon deck. Tome, yeah, that one. That dragon deck, yes.
We're bringing you to Dragon Tribal, we're seeing.
Yeah. Because it's a dragon. Yes, I know.
Fair. Okay, you got me. All right, we'll move on. Phil, what do you got for us as your second pick for Mana Rocks?
Yeah, it's a 5 mana Pyromancer's Goggles. Yeah, 5 mana, legendary artifact. Tap, add 1 red mana to your mana pool. Not very efficient. When this mana is spent to cast a red instant or sorcery spell, I see a pattern here, copy that spell and you may choose new targets.
Would there be a spell you copy?
How would you copy it?
Is there any red instance? There is actually an extra turn spell that's in red. There's a couple, actually.
Sure, but how about Genesis Ultimatum? Sometimes you just need to get that value. I'm not taking extra turns in Commander, and I can't play this on Arena, so haven't played this with extra turn spells. But man, play a Genesis Ultimatum with this. straight to Value Town. I mean, 5 mana is obviously a bit pricey, but doubling up in your red deck, man, that doubles up a lot, obviously. But if you go into multicolor spells, you get some pretty insane payoffs there. Would you build a deck around this? I don't know, but I would throw it in a deck just to have fun. And I just always forget about this, so I'm almost sure that I never played it in Commander. But looking at this list, it's definitely a fun one. It's still a B for everyone. I mean, Mono Red is the best place probably, or like Timur Spellsling or something. Very archetype dependent again, but super fun, and it copies spells, which is, yeah, that just wins my heart.
It's super good with the red, like, discard draw effects. Those are some of, I think, the strongest cards to use it with, because the copy gets around the, big score, unexpected windfall. It gets around the discard the second time. So the second one's just, like, pure value. And we keep getting more and more of those effects. So if you're Thrill of Possibilitying or whatever, it becomes really good. Just doubling up removal is fine. And then it can also do ridiculous things if you double up, like, rituals, like Seething Song or anything like that adds a bunch of mana. Like, doubling that is going to allow you to have a super huge turn, a mana geyser or something. So for me, it's very niche, and I need to have the right deck to support it. But in that deck, it's like such a powerful and fun card.
I imagine copying Cruel Ultimatum. Well, there you still have to target, so one lucky player doesn't get Cruel. But man,
I think it's a bit underrated. And is it Spellslinger? Is it blue red is the primary colors for instant sorcery spell archetype, and I think in your typical Izzet deck, you're going to have enough red instant sorceries to make it work, like outside of mono red. What do you guys think? Like, would you run it? Is it Spellslinger? You don't really see it that often.
Yeah, I think it would still be worth it. I think it would depend on your, like, specific build. If for some reason you don't have many, Izzet spells or mono red spells, then it would get worse. And it is a bummer that you can't, like, copy your whatever, Ponder or Treasure Cruise or something. But I still think it's worth it. I think the other question is, like, how many of these can you play? You got Goggles, and we talked about Primal Amulet. Maybe in your Izzet deck, you're just better off trying to flip an Amulet and doing it that way rather than going with the Goggles. So maybe that's part of the issue. But I don't think you should exclude it from Izzet. I think you would have enough spells in a 2-color deck to make it work.
I think it's terrible in Izzet. Well, because everything that you want to be doing in an Izzet deck is primarily blue. And then, I mean, there obviously Izzet spells, but, like, I feel like, like, for 5 mana, is this what I want to, like, add into my Izzet deck? One. Yeah, like, that's just we were just talking about, like, like some of the other 4 mana rocks, right? The dungeon one. Oh, that makes 1 mana for 4. Like that, the dungeon one would do more than this. But in the right deck, I feel like in specifically mono red decks, like there's not a lot of like mono red decks that can use it outside of like burn decks. I love this in Torbrand. Like, this thing is awesome in Torbrand. So I don't know. This is very much so specific to just mono red, I think.
Wouldn't it be pretty good in Grixis decks? If you have to play multicolor spells, but as soon as you play like removal spells or something with it and copy them, you get pretty sick card advantage there.
Maybe you get like the best like things you get out of that are like Rakdos Charm, and do I want to copy Bedevil.
That?
Cruel Ultimatum is obviously the best case scenario.
Yeah,
like I love the idea of copying a Cruel Ultimatum, but I could do that not attached to a 5 mana artifact, right? Like, so that's the main thing. So you really gotta like understand like this is a 5 mana rock, and yeah, so I think that's where mono red, like, I want it to be good with anything I cast, no matter what it is.
Just
and
play
that's
Painter's
where
Servant.
I mean, okay, yeah, I could just play Painter's Servant. That's fair.
Broken. We finally broke Painter's Servant.
And I think it also suffers because of double vision being a thing now.
Yeah.
Double vision, just lets you copy the first spell each turn, and you don't have to deal with color restrictions or anything. So maybe in Izzet, you would just play double vision instead.
But it doesn't tap for mana, Seth.
That's true. That is true. That is the
one
upside
mana.
One mana.
It does
that
not tap for one mana.
One mana.
That you spent 5 mana for. Yeah, okay.
Huge. All right, maybe, yeah, okay. Maybe just mono red spell slinger then. I agree. All right, we'll move on. I have a spicy one that, okay, this is controversial because we'll get to the rating very soon, but I'm very disappointed in all of you. So I'm going to tell you that my choice is Sceptre of Eternal Glory. A lot of people aren't familiar with this card yet because it came out as a Warhammer 40k exclusive in the Necron pre-constructed deck. So it's very recent. It is a 4-mana colorless legendary artifact, 2 abilities. First, you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, or you can tap it to add 3 mana of any one color. Activate only if you control 3 or more lands with the same name. So basically, if you have 3 basic lands that share the same name, you have like 3 plains, for example, or 3 swamps, or 3 mountains, aka you're like a monocolor deck that actually runs basic lands as you should. Then it's basically a Thran Dynamo that taps for mana of any color, so mana fixes it. It adds color to your mana pool. And while monocolor decks, which are the ones that are most likely to use this ability, while they don't have the highest mana restrictions or the mana consumption, like you can get away from more colorless sources in monocolor decks, it's still really nice to have colored mana. Like, if you're in a mono black deck, it's much better having a Thran Dynamo that taps for triple black than it is for triple colorless, because you will be able to cast your, 1 mana black spells much more easily off that and stuff. And to my utter dismay, I thought this would be an easy A all around. I gave it an A. I look at the rest of you, and you give D's. You give D's to set a better Thran Dynamo for monocolor decks, and you give it D's. What is going on?
It's a singleton format. Who plays basics?
It's an A. I'll put it in 2-color decks. I'll put it in my 2-color decks as well.
Well, you got to remember,
Monocolor
Tomer.
and 2-color.
You got to remember, you're the only one in our group that believes every deck should run 20 to 25 basics, no matter how many colors you're playing.
20
so
basics.
not all of us are just always going to have, 10 islands and 10 mountains on the battlefield. Some of us play MDFCs and utility. Some of us like value out of our lands. We like to actually do powerful things with our mana base,
I like
rather than try
to
to turn a mana rock into a Thran Dynamo. That sounds like a lot of effort for a very minimal payoff. This is going to sound like trolling, but I would literally play Hedron Archive 10 times out of 10 over this. I would, even in a monocolor deck, I would not even think twice about.
I agree with
about
Seth.
it.
I would play the Hedron Archive over this card every time.
At least it draws cards.
You're telling me if you're in a monocolor deck, you won't have 3 basic lands in your deck to make this consistently tap for 3 mana.
Well, yes, but
a bit more than 3 in the entire deck.
I wouldn't necessarily have it.
Please.
You wouldn't necessarily have on turn 4 though. Like, if you're playing this on time,
why not?
I wouldn't have it on turn 4.
There's a chance that you're playing a tapped MDFC or something, or whatever utility land. So, and then I just don't think the reward's there in monocolored. Colored mana, it is an upside technically, but not that big of an upside. And we've just been talking about all these other similar options where you could maybe draw some cards, or maybe you take the initiative and go that direction. There's so many things. I feel like you're doing all this work and you're building a Thran Dynamo. So why wouldn't you just play Thran Dynamo and cut out all the work?
In monocolor deck as well.
How many basic? Seth, in a monocolor deck, how many basic lands are you running?
In a monocolor deck, probably most of them are 20, somewhere in that range.
That's enough for Sceptre of Eternal Glory, I think.
It is, but
not?
I think it's enough, but why risk it when I could play Hedron Archive and draw cards, or just play Thran Dynamo and not have to worry about what lands I have on the battlefield? I feel like it just doesn't do. If it made 4 mana or something, then maybe I would be interested, but it just doesn't seem like it does that much more than the other options. And you have this extra hoop you got to jump through.
I mean,
and even if we go monocolor, Tomer, that would make it a B, right? If the argument is it's very good in monocolor,
no, I
think
dual color decks too, but yeah, it is a B.
Whoa.
Really, you play in dual color decks?
Wild.
Yes,
five color.
No
I
way.
run 20 basics in my dual color decks.
I just checked my deck list and I played mono black braids recently. And to be fair, I played 20 swarms.
Okay.
So I guess, but I wouldn't run Thran Dynamo in there.
That's even on the low end, though. Don't you run like Cabal Coffers and stuff? What, are you just hoping for Urborg every single game?
Gotta get the Urborg.
I think I ran like Expedition Map or something. I don't know.
Oh, wow. 2 chances to find your Urborg.
I'm getting even worse with my basics recently. Like if I play
don't let Seth influence you, Phil.
I might play 3 basics in a 3-color deck if I have no land tutors. Why not? Channel lands.
This is like actually not even possible to turn on in my 3-color decks. Like I have two of each. I have 2 of each basic in 2-color decks. I still would struggle because I have probably a total of like 10 basics, and then in monocolor I probably play about 18. Like in my mono blue because I have all the other lands, and then I have utility lands. So I don't know, man. Like. Again, why wouldn't I just then play like one of like Thran Dynamo?
I'm looking at some of my 2-color decks, and they have like 2 plains and 3 swamps or something. Like I would have to literally draw every one of my basics to turn this on.
Seth, you had like a 2-color deck with Sword of the Animus, and you failed to find after like the first hit. Like,
I know I don't play Sword of the Animus anymore for that reason, because I'd rather be able to not have to worry about the basic lands. So I could see this card being good for you though, Tomer, because you are the big believer in basic lands, and if you are someone who's going to have a lot of basics, then it does get better. I still think a slightly upgraded Thran Dynamo is not something to get like super excited about, but if you do have a ton of basics, then it probably gets good. If you're playing all basics in a monocolor deck, then it is technically a strictly upgraded Thran Dynamo, because you should always have enough of the same land. So yeah.
I mean, like I usually go for monocolor decks. I usually go at least 20. I'll go like to 25, and that leaves me with like 12 utility lands to work with as well. So, I don't know. I did put it down to B. A was a little bit too high because I will not put it over more than a 2-color deck. But, okay, fine. These, though, these hurt.
Not moving it.
Straight unplayable trash. All right. Let me know in the comment section below. Oh, boy, that hurts. All right. We'll move on from my pain to the last round of cards, I believe. We got time for that? Or do we end it here? We're like an hour 15 for it.
Lightning round?
Lightning round.
I don't know if we have it in us to do lightning round. Okay,
we should probably do it, yeah.
Yeah,
because we already mentioned the Great Henge, and
lightning round. And
right.
This will help make it go a little bit easier, because I see my last card and Tomer's last card I actually wanted to talk about together because they're very similar. So maybe we just lump them together, which is Timeless Lotus and Prismatic Geoscope. Timeless Lotus, 5 mana, ETB's taps for Wooburg, and then Prismatic Geoscope, 5 mana, ETB's taps for mana equal to your domain, essentially. So if you have all 5 basic land types, then it would tap for Wooburg. If you only have 4, it would tap for Wooburg. So essentially very, very much the same card, because you can only play Timeless Lotus in a 5-color deck anyway. Assuming you're playing a tier mana base of fetches and triomes, you should have all the land types for Prismatic Geoscope. As far as our ratings, Timeless Lotus, C for everyone except Crim. Crim's got it at a B. Prismatic Geoscope, C for me and Phil. Crim and Tomer have it as B. These are cards that I was surprised people were so hyped about Timeless Lotus, because my first thought was, it's Prismatic Geoscope if you're playing a good mana base, and no one really plays Prismatic Geoscope, so I don't really get the hype for these cards. The main reason I wanted to bring them up is Timeless Lotus is like really expensive, and people seemed really excited about it, and I love my 5-color decks more than just about anyone. Like, I think if you look at our stats episodes of Commander Clash, that's usually what I play most every single season. I don't run either of these cards. I'm not going to play a Timeless Lotus in my 5-color deck. It just doesn't seem worth it. I'd rather play the Chromatic Orrery that we were talking about before, or something like that can give me even more value. So, I don't know. Am I missing something here? I know none of us rated these super highly, but why do you think the rest of the Magic world seems hyped about a card like Timeless Lotus when we already had a version in Prismatic Geoscope that no one plays, and it just doesn't seem that good?
It has Lotus in the name.
Is that it? Just the
not
the
even.
name?
Yeah, legitimately, it has Lotus in the name.
It's
However,
mythic. It's legendary. Like, I don't know, Lotus.
So,
However,
would you
it
play
doesn't-
these in a 5-color deck?
Yeah.
I mean, in Joda,
consistently?
you should probably play it.
Okay, Joda, I can see that, because Joda, that lets you cast anything in your Joda deck or whatever, but
I mean,
is it worth it? Is tapping
Yeah.
for one of each color on a tap 5-mana rock worth it?
It's not going to be bad, probably.
You know what? I'm gonna bump it to Bs for both. Yeah.
I think it is definitely worth it. I mean, yeah, it enters the battlefield tapped, but untapping with these cards means that your 5-color deck is able to seriously pop off and cast whatever you want. Like for the most part, I really like these in a 5-color deck.
I just find it silly that Timeless Lotus is like as much as it currently is, $20 for a card that otherwise the exact same card, Prismatic Geoscope, is literally the same domain. You're gonna like especially with like the triumphs and everything. Maybe in like certain mana bases you won't be able to get domain very consistently, but like if you're using triumphs and stuff, it's very easy to get all tapper for 5 each time. It's just not legendary, so if legendary matters, I guess that's the thing. I don't know.
That's an upside of Lotus.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you could argue that Geoscope is better because you can play it in a 4-color deck. Like, you literally, because of color identity, can't play Timeless Lotus, and there's ways to get all 5 land types, even in a 4-color deck these days. We got that new gate in Dominaria United that you just get to choose a land type. There's stuff like that. So I think there's actually, like, I would argue that Prismatic Geoscope might actually just be better, assuming budget's not a concern. I think it's so funny, Timeless Lotus is way more expensive, so getting it is really hard on the budget, but to actually support it, you don't need anything. You can play a Gates mana base and it'll work. Prismatic Geoscope, to really support it, you are probably going to need fetches and triumphs and chalk lands to really consistently be getting all the land types.
And it is legendary, so it does trigger things like Joda. Like Prismatic Geoscope, you're not going to get a Joda spin, but Timeless Lotus you will. But still, it's just kind of funny that it's like...
It's funny that it's like 12 times as expensive, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, they're okay. I don't think they're like the best cards in your 5-color deck, but they're like, 5 mana rock that taps for 5 is like, that's good.
Yeah, all right. I mean, I think I'm still going to keep it at C. The question is how many of them can run. I think I would definitely run Chromatic Orrery over it, and then I just don't know how many 4+ mana rocks you can run in a typical deck. And I say this as Hedron Archive's biggest fan. And you can't run that many of them.
Just take out a land for it, Seth. That's fine. Take out a basic.
That's oh my god, I'm getting so off topic, but did you see how many people in the last Commander Clash comments got so mad about me saying I don't pick decks that run 31 lands? There were so many people in the comments that were like, my Dragon deck runs 31 lands and I never miss a land drop. Well, you're an idiot for not picking decks with no lands. I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize people had such strong feelings about building their decks incorrectly.
I think I know why, though. I ran a poll in the community section of the YouTube channel, and I think it was something like 40% of people run the house rule where they do infinite mulligans until you have a keepable 7. So
I think 40% more people do it.
Of it's very casual friendly.
Yeah, I think nobody actually just says in casual Commander night, like, oh yeah, I had to keep a 4-hand card land. That's the rule. It's like everybody's going to say, just take another one. It's not about winning here. So I think even if they don't explicitly say it, I think, like, I remember when I was a kid, and I probably do it with my friends as well, like, why would I let them keep a 4-card hand in a game that will last like 2 hours? That makes sense. They still have to admit that 30 land is a bit bit tight on the mana base there.
I mean, you
I'm
can
sure.
mathematically say that the odds of you hitting like your 5th land drop on time are like abysmally low when you have 30 lands. Like, yeah, you can use stuff like Ponder and Preordain to smooth it out and make it more likely that you find it or something like that. But like, even using those, it's still like you're just building objectively wrong if you're trying to curve out to like 6 drops, like you're doing it wrong. I'm sorry.
Oh, the comments.
Oh boy, I completely
Listen to us, we have a
derailed
podcast.
lightning. I completely derailed lightning round. My bad.
Whatever,
Yeah,
we're done
stop
with
for the lightning
Prismatic,
round.
Geoscope, and Lotus. Krim, what's your last card?
So my last card is Caged Sun. Just 6 mana. Then when it enters the battlefield, let me get the actual like Oracle text on this. But when it enters the battlefield, you choose a color. Creatures you control of the chosen color get +1/+1. And whenever a land's ability adds 1 or more mana of the chosen color, add 1 additional mana of that color. This, I don't know if this is still like expensive, but like this card at a point was like probably pushing like $20 or something. And there was a reason why. I think it was one of the best things you could have in a monocolor deck. It's an anthem. It doubles, and then it's not hard to also still use this in some decks because all it cares about is that the land's ability or whatever adds 1 or more mana of the chosen color, right? So I really love this in any kind of like monocolor deck and maybe some 2-color decks. But again, this is just a huge mana doubler and an anthem. So my little like blue like merfolk, I love it.
Oh yeah, especially in like mono blue that can't really ramp otherwise.
Yeah.
Like mono green probably doesn't need it, but yeah, it was a staple, right? When I thought about this card a few years ago, I would say, oh, that's a classic commander card. Yeah, probably don't see it that much anymore. 6 mana is a bit much, but I think I've got it at A probably. I'm not sure here.
I think you do. A.
Yeah.
A's for
still
Crim
an
and
A.
Phil, B's for the other two.
I still
Just
put it in every
feels
single
amazing.
monocolor deck. Like, unless your deck has like a lot of like if you're in a monocolor deck, as long as your deck doesn't have a lot of colorless lands in it, like this is basically a Mirari's Wake. It costs 1 more mana, but it's for any color. And like Mirari's Wake, it's green-white, so you're already in green. So like, yeah, okay, you get to double your land ramp. Like, okay, that's good. But like, if you're in mono white or something, you get to double all your mana. That's insane. I think it's great in black even, because black has Cabal Coffers, but like, wouldn't I want Cabal Coffers 2, 3, and 4? Like, yeah, I do. I'll take all of them, please. Thank you, because my Torment of Hellfire is going to be that much more lethal, right? So, yeah, I think this card is straight gas. It's really, really good, even to say. And it's not that expensive anymore. It's like $5.
Yeah, now it's like cheaper. So,
yeah. Card reprints.
Maybe like A is a bit high, and maybe I should be lowering my grade to about a B. So we'll go to a B because it excels in any deck that is a monocolor deck. It is very good there. So I guess that does mean that it is by definition what is a B, right? Like good in specific decks.
Yeah, I guess.
What do you put in color decks?
A.
No. I mean, maybe very specific to color decks, but in general, I think you got to be pretty much mono-colored.
When I had
by that rule, it's a B. I guess.
I had it in a Simic, like Merfolk deck, but that's because even though it's Simic, it's splashing green really, and it's primarily a blue deck.
Would.
I wonder though, the way it's worded, it's when a land's ability has 1 or more mana of the chosen color, you add an additional. I wonder, you could do it with like Urborg or Yavimaya now, I guess, and turn all your lands into one color and name that color. Although then you're still kind of forced for tapping for that color, so it's still a little clunky and casting some of your spells. I'll just say, we learned in Standard a few years ago that doubling your mana is literally one of the most powerful things you can do in Magic. Like, seriously, as remember Wilderness Reclamation and Nissa and like that era, I will play mana doublers every chance I get, because having twice as much mana as all your opponents is just like an inherently broken thing to do. So I love cards like this. I'll play in every monocolor deck that I can.
And the beauty in it is that, like, you know, there's what is it, Gauntlet of Might? Like that one, it doubles any land that taps that color, right? Whereas this one is just your lands. So
and if you're if you're in green, you also get Zendikar's Resurgent, or that's probably the best 5-color one because it's just like any land that you tap is going to get doubled, which is very good as well, and you draw cards. So play more mana doublers; they're busted.
They are, and I think they've fallen out of favor because yes, they're expensive and stuff, so people don't really see them as ramp. But like I kind of see them as ramp and also your finishers, because like once you have them on the battlefield, if you get to untap, like okay, if it gets blown up and you tapped out to cast it, then yeah, it feels bad. But like if you untap with it, you're basically in a winning position as long as you have good cards in your deck. You're going to rape out those good cards very, very quickly and probably win the game in short order. So. Yeah, I think they're still worth in 2022. And also another card that's still worth it in 2022. Phil, round it out for us. What's the final card?
Yeah, we got the big one here, mentioned in the beginning. We gotta at least mention it. The Great Henge. Nobody pays 9 mana for it, but technically it's 9 mana. But this spell costs X less, where X is the greatest power amongst creatures you control. Then it taps for green, and you gain 2 life, and... Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. Yeah, sure. It usually costs 2 mana. Maybe not 2, but you can easily make it cost 4 or something. Then it taps for 2, gains 2 life, and just draws so many cards. The card is just super busted. Very fun to play, and you are going to win if you do that a couple of turns. Just insane. It's like the draw a card part is, oh my.
And it gets a counter for some reason.
Yeah,
with the frame, just like making mana and drawing cards, there's not enough values. They're like, yeah, let's put some counters on it. Why not?
And gain life. Why not? Why not gain some life?
It's even better in +1/+1 counter decks. Like, yeah.
I think about how this is in a cycle and like how much better it is in its cycle. Like it is by far the best.
What did the white one do?
Yo, hey,
no one knows.
Hey,
that card is just.
Fun fact about this though: if I was at this podcast when Eldraine released, I greatly underestimated Embercleave. So good thing we didn't have that on record. I thought like, who attacking? Who does this?
But like
you do that quite a lot.
that is a card that I think a lot of people overlooked because of how good Eldraine was, right? Like and like when you look at everything that is in that set, you know, like it's hard to pick because they were all stars. So
but Great Henge was clear from the beginning, like,
right?
Yeah,
it's since ever insanely expensive, insanely powerful. And just put it in every green deck that plays creatures. I mean, that's an easy S from everybody, I assume.
It's the only S we got from everybody.
Yeah.
The only time we gave an S.
Yeah, because it doesn't cost 4+ mana. It's like the one that
really
you don't
costs
pay 4 mana for.
Wink.
I think it's good from mono green up to 5-color. The only requirement is you do have to have a decent number of creatures. Like, as long as you have a decent number of creatures in your deck, play the Great Henge. Well, decent number of creatures and $60 extra in your pocket. But other than that, yes, you should.
Oh my
it's up to like $60 again. Yeah.
Jeez.
But if that's not an issue, it's a very strong Magic card.
Pricing is free, by the way.
Also true.
$60. All right. Well, with that, we finally finish our. Wait, no.
Yeah. Oh.
Yes.
I think so.
Yes, with that, we finished our list. Fantastic. We went over 12 cards, and again, we're going to have the full list of cards that we ranked in the video description and also in the article. So if you go to mtggolf.com, you find the article. We're going to have it pasted in there as well. Let us know what your favorite 4+ mana value mana rock is. Let us know in the comment section. Maybe there's definitely stuff that we overlooked, obviously. And let us know if we're off base, if you think we're off base on certain cards, especially Sceptre of Eternal Glory. You should definitely mention how many basics you... Actually, no.
Hedron Archive.
No, I heard from the comment section that apparently you all run like 31 lands in your deck. So actually, I don't want your opinion on Sceptre of Eternal Glory. I take all that. I take all that.
And lastly, is Bolas Citadel a mana rock?
Yes. All right. Let us all know in the comment section. We'll be back next week with I don't know what. We'll let you all know when we figure it out. All right. See ya.